It's minus 15 degrees. Wind is coming off a glacier a few hundred miles north, and you are standing there in the open, completely naked. No coat, no fur, not even much body hair left to speak of. That's not a horror movie premise. That's Tuesday for over 1 million years of human evolutionary history. Here's the scale of it. Every single person watching this, you, me, all of us, descends from a lineage that spent something like 1 million years surviving brutal Eurasian winters with no tailored clothing at all. Not a jacket, not a sewn hide, nothing. We know this because of lice. Yes, lice. The clothing louse, the one that lives in fabric and lays its eggs in seams, genetically split off from the head louse somewhere between 83,000 and 170,000 years ago. That's the earliest point we can prove humans were regularly wearing garments. But Homo erectus lost its thick body fur somewhere between 1.2 and 3.3 million years ago to sweat more efficiently while running down prey. Do the math. That's a gap of over 1 million years where hairless, coatless hominins were walking around in the snow. So here's the thing nobody tells you. They weren't shivering their way through it. Their bodies were doing something closer to internal combustion. It's called non-shivering thermogenesis, and it runs on a tissue most people have only heard of in the context of good fat, bad fat headlines: brown adipose tissue, or brown fat. Here's the simple version. Cold hits your skin, and a receptor called TRPM8, the same one that makes mint feel cold, fires off a signal to your brain. Your brain tells your nervous system to dump a chemical messenger, norepinephrine, straight into your brown fat deposits. That chemical flips on a protein called UCP1, sitting inside the mitochondria of those fat cells. Normally, mitochondria burn fuel to make ATP, the energy currency your cells run on. UCP1 breaks that process. It short-circuits it. Instead of making usable energy, the cell just makes heat, pure heat, radiating out from fat deposits packed around your neck and spine, warming the blood before it reaches your organs. You are, in effect, built with an internal space heater, and for a long time, science thought adults didn't even have one. Here's where it gets complicated. For decades, the consensus was that brown fat was a baby thing. Infants have it, adults lose it, end of story. Adults were assumed to survive cold through shivering and shelter alone. Then, in the late 2000s, doctors doing PET scans for cancer kept noticing warm, glowing patches around adult necks and collarbones. Turns out, adults never lost it. It was just dormant, waiting for cold to switch it back on. And that wasn't the only assumption to fall apart. For a long time, scientists assumed that surviving an ice age without sewn clothing was basically impossible, that hominins in glacial Europe must have had some kind of tailored garments to make it through. Then the louse genetics came back, and the timeline didn't line up. True clothing with bone needles and fitted hides doesn't show up until around 40,000 years ago, which means for over 1 million years, something else was carrying the load. Brown fat, behavior, fire, bodies doing the work that fabric does for us now. And that work had a price tag. Running your own furnace 24 hours a day through a Pleistocene winter cost an enormous amount of fuel. Energetic modeling puts Neanderthal caloric needs at 3,000 to 5,500 calories a day just to function, and up to 7,000 during the worst cold snaps. That's not a diet plan, that's a survival threshold. Miss a hunt, lose a food cache, and the body has nothing left to burn. It got worse for the vulnerable. Newborns have almost no fat reserves and a huge surface area relative to their size. They lose heat fast. Without swaddling, a winter birth was a genuine gamble, and it put brutal pressure on groups to keep fires going and to physically share body heat with infants. Then there's what happened inside the caves themselves. Hunkering down out of the wind meant less sunlight, and less sunlight meant vitamin D crashed. Fossil skeletons from Cima de los Huesos in Spain show rachitic lesions, bone damage from that exact deficiency. In women, childhood rickets could deform the pelvis, narrowing the birth canal and turning childbirth into something even more dangerous than it already was. Some researchers even argued the bone damage looks less like malnutrition and more like something closer to hibernation, a genuinely contested idea, but the bones themselves are not in dispute. Cold left a mark, one way or another. And weirdly, some of that cold is still written into you. As modern humans pushed north out of Africa between 50,000 and 25,000 years ago, natural selection cranked up a particular version of that TRPM8 cold gene, the frequency climbing from about 5% in West Africa to 88% in Northern Europe. That version made the cold more bearable, but it came with a catch. It also raises the risk of migraines. So if you know someone of Northern European descent who gets brutal migraines, there's a decent chance they're carrying a genetic souvenir from an ancestor's Ice Age winter, a trade nobody asked for, made tens of thousands of years before headaches even had a name. So picture that person again, standing in the wind, no coat, no fur, except now you know what's actually happening under that bare skin. Fat cells quietly burning themselves up for heat, a receptor tuned by tens of thousands of frozen winters, a body absorbing costs we're still paying quietly every time someone reaches for the aspirin. They weren't underdressed, they were just running on a different kind of engine.